Hey guys, Rip the Rage here. Hope you're having a fantastic day, and welcome to my review of Wonder Woman. And my god, this movie was fantastic. This is the first time, let me say this now, this is the first time that DC has gotten their cinematic universe right for me. Now, I enjoyed the Batman movies, I enjoyed Man of Steel a lot. I think the same director is actually, that did Man of Steel, came over and did Wonder Woman, and I think that's why it was so good because Man of Steel was handled very well. Absolutely hated Batman v Superman. It wasn't. I'd give that one a 5. Because it was just painfully average, and some parts of it just didn't make any sense. But thankfully, none of that came over to Wonder Woman. They did Wonder Woman right, and it was good. And all right, let's just talk about this movie because it's just so good. So, let me preface this entire review by saying I am not fully versed in the DC universe or multiverse or I haven't read all the comics and read the books and seen all the different variations of the movies and shows and all that. I'm not some super nerd for DC, okay? And likewise with Marvel though, I'm not some super nerd for Marvel. I don't know much about. I used to not know much, but their cinematic universe has been so engrossed that it's brought me in. And that's what I'm hoping DC can do, is bring in people like me who have not read the comics, who have not seen all the other million, billion movies and shows about these characters, and can give us the origin stories and set up a greater cinematic universe and make it fun and make it good. And I felt that Wonder Woman did that. It nailed that for her. So, that being said, I I just wholeheartedly love this movie. So we're gonna break it down into 4 different sections. I'm gonna do the pros. I'm gonna talk about what I liked about the movie. I'm gonna do the cons next. I'm gonna talk about what I didn't like. After that, I'm gonna talk about my favorite moments in the movie, like the top scenes that I absolutely loved or made me feel like deep emotion towards. And then I'm gonna render my final verdict. So let's talk about the pros first. The pros of this movie, number one, first and foremost, the action. The action in this movie has been better than any other DC film so far. And even and I say DC, and I don't really count the old Batman movies that had damn, I cannot his name is slipped my mind. I'm not good with actor names too much. But in the old Batman, I'm talking about like when Batman fought Penguin, and there was like when back. I'm trying to remember now what it was back with the I think it was with also with the Joker and all that. That Batman back then, before he became George Clooney and then went to Christian Bale and is now Ben Affleck. The one way back when, back in like the '90s, I think was that Batman, and that one was WB doing it, and I think that was WB just taking it and saying, no, this is our Batman, we're doing it this way, and they stuck it basically to exactly how the comics were. But basically, the new stuff, the new Batman stuff, I liked it, but the action could have been better. And aside from the one example that I love is when Heath Ledger was the Joker in Batman Dark Knight. In Dark Knight, love that movie, but I think that's because Heath Ledger was the main antagonist in that film. But back to Wonder Woman. Okay, so DC so far, they've always had this sort of power trip in their movies, and it's like when Man of Steel was in there, it was like, okay, he's got this grudge match with Zod that levels this town and fucks shit up. But they're so powerful, you really don't feel a sense of danger or urgency. And then again, in Batman v Superman, I saw Superman just beating the shit out of Batman when Batman didn't use the kryptonite. And it was scenes like that went, okay, well, these guys are super mega powerful. But then you look at something like the Avengers, and they had their action on point. It was fun. They had their funny moments, they had their actiony moments, and their actiony moments were, could be funny within the action itself, and the fighting and everything was perfect, and it was realistic without being too grounded. They still did some crazy stuff, but that's what Wonder Woman did here. Is they nailed the action. So I think one of the good ones to reference this is there's a scene when the Germans first show up. By the way, let me say this now. Spoiler alert, this is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and watch the movie. I don't know why you would be watching a review if you already seen it, but there's other people that do spoiler-free reviews and just say the movie's fantastic. And also, you can just skip to the end to hear my final verdict. I'll put a time link in the description. But, yeah, so, spoiler. I'm going to spoil so much of this movie. I'm just going to talk about everything. Anyway, so in the beginning, the Germans show up, right? So in the trailer you're watching the background here, you've seen the pilot now a couple times. He's crashed into the Maskira is, I believe, what their island is called, and he crashes because he's trying to run from the Germans, and he's a spy and all that. I'll get into the story later. But basically, the Germans during World War One they show up to the Amazonian island, and during that, they just, and the Amazonians are warriors, so they're just like, oh fuck no, you are not coming onto my island like that. And so one of them, they do like flaming arrows shooting at their little boats, and then they hit the thing. And once they reach land, then they go, okay, and then the queen of the Amazonians like, okay, go. And one of the Amazonian chicks takes this grappling hook, just chucks it as hard as she can into the rock face because they're up on this big ass cliff, and it sticks in, and she goes swinging down while shooting a bow and arrow at these guys. And it's just fantastic. Obviously, the Germans had guns, so she got killed immediately, but they didn't know what guns were, so they couldn't really anticipate that. But that was just a really good action scene. And then later in the same scene, the actual general, when everybody's fighting on the beach, there's like 3 Germans hiding behind a rock, and she's like, okay, we're gonna get them. And she looks over at this one chick, and she runs at him while holding out 3 arrows on a bow. And she's like, shield! And she jumps off this shield to this badass jump over, and she just knocks them all out with 3 shots. Perfect. Beautiful action. And all the scenes with Wonder Woman actually knocking people around is beautiful. I love the use of slow motion in the action scenes, because it really lets you sit there and see the gritty details of the CGI and be like, oh, that is nice. For instance, in the trailer here, you've seen the moment when she breaks into the Germans, and and the one dude tries to like hit her with, like, I guess it was either his gun or like a lamp post or something, or like a table leg. I'm not sure what he hit her with. It was like a 2x4 or something, and it just shatters and splinters all around her body. She doesn't flinch. Like, it's coming up right about now. Should be when he hits her. In just a second here. Yeah, right there. Beautiful. And she's just like, oh, that hurt. Oh, you dead now. And it's just good. The action in this movie, and there's the cliff scene I was talking about, the one that's jumped off the cliff. You've seen it. Really good. But yeah, that is the action. The action in this movie is on point. The sword fighting, the gun fights, everything about that. Moving on from the action, they had emotional moments in this movie, right? There are sad moments, and there are happy moments, and there's funny moments, and every one of them rings home for me, except for one, but I'll get onto it later, and that's in the cons section. But in this whole movie, they have really, really good scenes. One of which is in the end of the movie, where or near the end of the movie, where Steve Trevors, that's the pilot guy, he's talking to Wonder Woman, and he's just like, maybe, and she had failed, I guess, or she thought she failed because she killed the bad guy, but the fighting didn't stop, which she thought it would. But that's, part of the story. I'll talk about that in a minute. But he's basically giving her the speech and about how humans may just be good and bad, and maybe some people are just more bad than others, and maybe you can't save everybody or stop the fighting. Maybe you're not powerful enough. Maybe that's just how the way English on point. That's just the way things are, and that's how the world works. And that's just a fact of life. That moments like that were really good in this movie, and I got really sad at certain scenes. Well, that's in the favorite scenes, and I'll talk about that later. The CGI on point, loved it. The bullets and the plane crash and the magic. You've seen it a little bit in like the end of the trailer there. Like the lightning. The lighting was really all right in the Maskira, but after they left the Maskira and got to London, it just got really dark, and But I'll get on to that in the con section. But yeah, everything is pretty good. The CGI holds together really well in this, and that's pretty good. Considering some of the stuff I've seen from when I was seeing the early stuff from Justice League, they were showing off some of the CGI like outfits and stuff. It's like, that does not look right. Yeah, it looks a bit fucked up, But no, it works well, especially the lasso. I love the way they do the lasso. It's obviously CGI, but the way it moves and the way it twirls, it looks like it should have physical, like, magical properties to it, and the way she commands it and wraps people up with it, it's great. I love it. And I'm also a big fan of contrasting colors, so that bright yellow lasso is a beautiful thing for me. And the Maskira, finally, this is the last pro. The Maskira was absolutely stunning. the island. It had like cliffs of like marble white and bright green trees and everything. And I think the reason I liked it so much was because it did something that DC hadn't done before, which was take their movies out of the darkness. There's always like this sort of intentional. I don't know. I mean, it can't not be intentional. It's happened basically every movie for DC now. It's just dark as hell. They not dark in the story sense, but dark in the in the visual sense. It's intentional, and they like to keep things dark to a certain extent. It's almost like they apply this like black opaque filter over the movie at certain points, and it just does not work. But that's another thing. We'll get on to that. But the mascara, absolutely beautiful, nice contrasting poppy colors, and it's just vibrant and alive, and all the Amazonians are there. I love women that kick ass, by the way. I love that. That's something that was fully explored in this. They had beast women just knocking shit around. It was a whole civilization of warrior Amazons. It was great. I loved that about the mascara. It was beautiful. It was full of beautiful women, and it was just good. All right, so enough gushing about this movie's pros. Let's get on to the cons, because every movie has cons. No movie is perfect, just like no game is perfect. So the cons. Number one, muted colors. The number one biggest problem with this movie, the muted colors. It's again from the direct. It's from the same director as Man of Steel, and he is, and I believe it's him and his wife were the ones directing this, and they had this lighting and whatnot after, like I said earlier, like I said a minute ago, after the mascara. After you get to London, it's super dark and grungy, and I get that London is dark and grungy because in most movies that's how London is, but once they leave London, you think it would brighten up just a little bit or have some sort of contrast in the trees or something. There's not a lot of contrasting colors. It's a lot of grays, a lot of blacks, a lot of navy blue, and it just does not work well with this movie. I thought that, okay, maybe if they're going to do that, when she finally reveals her full outfit, because you never really see it. It's all kind of dark when she's at the mascara, and it's dark and she's hiding it under her clothes when she's in London. You never really get to see her outfit in full glory until the trench scene in No Man's Land. And that scene is beautiful, but her costume is not vibrant. I wanted vibrant, bright colors. I wanted a bright blue, bright red, a nice crimson red, a nice, not sky blue, but like a neon dark blue, if that makes any sense at all. I don't know if it does, but like an ocean blue, but like really bright so you can see it. And then the gold trim on her outfit could have been so much better. And it just, it's got, again, the muted colors. That's the best way I can explain it. The colors are just muted in this film, and it's to the detriment of the film. It makes things blend together and blur just a little bit, and it just fucks with my head. Number two is a smaller gripe, and something that I can overlook, and I'm going to overlook in the final verdict. But the Scotsman in this movie, so there's this squad of guys that the pilot has, and they have, of course, this little misfit band that has to go on this secret mission. Let me quickly give you the rundown of the plot exactly. So Diana is Wonder Woman, so she saves this pilot. Turns out the pilot is a spy, and he was spying on this woman named who is Dr. Moreau, who's, they call her Lady Poison, blah, blah, blah. And basically she's making this gaseous, like this gas that can eat through gas masks, so, it just kills people. And basically they have to stop that. And they go on this mission, so they have the pilot, they have Diana, and then the rest of the team consists of an Indian, an Arab, an Indian as a Native American Indian, an Arab, and a Scotsman, right? And so he's like, drinking and all that. Typical Scotsman stuff. He even wears a kilt when they're in battle, and that was kind of funny to me. They had this whole thing going on with the Scotsman, and he sort of, he's got this thing, this like problem where there's a scene where I think he's trying to kill a sniper, or he's in cover and he's aiming at this bell tower that a German sniper's in, and he doesn't fire, and he's got this noticeable distress on his face, like he doesn't want to be there, or he's hearing something in his head or something, and it's sort of implying that he has PTSD or some sort of mental problem. And earlier in the film they had a scene where he was stirring in his sleep and screaming, and she was like, you're safe. And she's like, I didn't need you. I didn't need anybody. He's all acting tough because he's like hearing the ghosts. He's probably hearing the voices of his dead friends or something. So typical PTSD stuff. And I didn't like this trope when they did it here. It was a little less in the Magnificent Seven. So the same trope showed up in Magnificent Seven. So somebody saw Magnificent Seven, said, "Hey, let's put that on a Wonder Woman movie because why not?" And then it was the same exact trope. Goodnight Robichaud in the Magnificent Seven had the same problem, but he actually talked to somebody at some point and actually had this moment of, and it looked like he started actually thinking about what's important, and maybe he turns around. But you can't just turn off PTSD. You can't just turn off. It's a mental disorder. You can't just stop it. You can just deal with it. But and I kind of bought it in Magnificent Seven. I overlooked it, but here I just can't overlook it. I have to make a point of it. He has no change. Like, there's no scene where the pilot or the pilot's name is Steve Travers, by the way. I keep referring to him as the pilot, but Steve Travers is the pilot. There was never a scene where Steve sits down with him and talks, or Diana sits down with him and talks about something. The best character development for him they ever had was, it's like, oh, I'm a shitty marksman. I can't even shoot. And she's like, oh, we like your singing, because he'd been singing in this previous scene. And it's like, oh, yeah. And so they start singing a little bit, and it's like, okay. That's about the most character arc for any of the squad guys in this entire film, because they were so bland and they were background characters, and it's not too bad because Diana and Steve Travers, they held up this film. They were really good. Diana was played by Gail Gadot, got it, and Chris Pine, who plays Captain Kirk, played Steve Trevor, and very fantastic. That pair just held this film together, and it was great. So off the Scotsman, the final battle. Let's talk about the final battle. So, the whole reason that they go to stop this whole gas lady is Diana believes that this sword that she has is a god killer, right? That's what the sword is. And it is, able to kill Ares, who, this whole backstory, I'm not going to get into it, this whole story of how man did this, and this whole mythological kind of tale that she's told as a child. And so basically, Ares is god of war. Ares is like the last god, and so he must be behind World War I. He must be behind all the millions of people dead and all that. And so if she goes and kills Ares, and can find Ares and kill him, then all the fighting will stop. At least, because she's got this very sheltered mindset, because she's been on that island, told these stories her entire life, and never really grown up until this moment. And so she goes and she kills this guy who she thinks is the bad guy, but not really. And then, this kind of ties in with my other point, with my next point of the villain was easy to spot. So the villain in this was played by David Thewlis, who plays Sir Patrick, blah blah blah, whatever his name is. I don't care. And if anybody's familiar with David Thewlis, I believe played the werewolf teacher in Harry Potter, and or the Lycan, I should say. He plays him. And they brought him back in here, and he is actually the god of war, it turns out. He is Ares. And he had been wounded in a final battle with Zeus, and he'd been on Earth since, Greek times, and he'd been watching mankind be pieces of shit, and he's been scheming this entire time to get mankind to destroy itself, and now he finally should. But he was the good guy, supposedly. He was in the English cabinet, and so then he comes over to, and so Diana kills the German general, thinking that he is General Ludendorff. She kills Ludendorff thinking that he is Ares, but he's not, and so nothing happens. That was the speech I was referring to earlier. But then David Thewlis' character, Ares, shows up and is actually like, oh, join me, blah, 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 blah. Typical villain stuff. And I could tell he was going to be the bad guy from the first moment I saw him, because he was so about, oh no, the amnesty has to happen. We don't need to go stop this evil gas lady with this new super weapon. We don't need to send our entire army to go do that. No, we need an amnesty. We need peace, blah, blah, blah. Basically trying to keep everybody not focused on the lady making the poisonous gas that's going to kill the whole world. Because reasons. And it was easy to spot him, and his stupid mustache just ruins some of the scenes with him, because you just see this stupid bushy mustache, through the helmet he wears, and in one of the flashback scenes, he just has a stupid mustache for no reason. And for a British person to have a mustache like that makes sense, but when he, in a flashback scene, he had been cast to Earth, and he looks up to the heavens. He's got this stupid bushy mustache. It was honestly pretty funny. But David Thewlis, yeah, this guy, he's got it's just the final battle was not too great because the way it happens is they fight, obviously, Diana and Ares, and it turns out that Diana is actually a demigod. She was Zeus's daughter, thus making Ares her older brother. And she wins, right? She wins, she kills Ares, and she gets rid of him. The sword turns out, she tries to stab him with the sword. It's not the god killer. She's the god killer. And so it's that, and then they have this big fight, and the fight wasn't that good. I would say the fight was not that good, not that great of a fight. It was this sort of, it was kind of like Batman v Superman, but it wasn't a close fight. It was sort of okay. So Ares is kind of kicking the shit out of her and taunting her, and then finally she unlocks her true inner self and her inner power and is able to defeat him. Huzzah! That's the whole thing. There's no big like grand battle or anything. It's sort of just them fist fighting for a while. It was really cool though because he did take some of the scrap metal from the explosions and whatnot that were going on, and like some of the tanks and stuff got blown up in the military base, and he took that as armor for himself with his horned helmet and all that. It was actually, that was a pretty good point. That goes back to the CGI being really cool. But as for the villain, he was easy to spot. I didn't really care for him too much. He didn't seem as big of a threat as he should have been. But that's also because Diana is just a beast. Wonder Woman is just a beast. And she kicked his ass. So let's move on to the favorite moments, and then I'll give the final verdict. So I had 3 moments in this movie that were absolutely great for me, and were fantastic. So number 1, Steve Trevor's. He dies. He dies. He did. At the end of the movie, there's like this bomber, and it's gonna take off, and it's loaded down with gas, and it's on a timer, so of course they can't stop it. And everything within 50 square miles is gonna be covered in this noxious gas that you can't get away from. You can't stop it. And so, and it's set to go to London. And so instead, he just flies it up into the sky and poof. And that's actually the moment when Diana realizes her true inner strength and blah, blah, and whatever. And so she's actually getting crushed by this tank tread that Ares wrapped around her. And when he died, she had such emotion on her face. When Steve Trevor dies, Wonder Woman has such emotion on her face at that moment. She just screams out, and it goes in that sort of like muted kind of scream where she's like, no, my love, and basically she gets super pissed, breaks out, and then kicks Ares' ass. But that scene was really good. But there was another scene where somebody else died earlier in the film. Antiops is the general in charge of the Amazonian army, and she died in the middle of the fight. She was actually the one that I had mentioned earlier who did like the triple shot on the Germans. But while doing that, then she comes back down, then somebody was about to shoot Wonder Woman, so she steps in the way and takes the bullet, blah, blah, blah. Typical hero stuff. But there was such emotion on their faces, and I think that's what held this movie together really well, was the emotion. And Diana was holding her, and it's like, no, my aunt is dead. This woman has basically been a second mother to me. What the hell is this? And she's just oozing sadness and the words on the tip of my tongue and I cannot think of it. Tragedy. This tragedy has befallen her, and she just feels it deeply, and she lets the audience know what she's feeling with her face. It was so good. And then a lighthearted one, the last favorite moment I had in this movie that I absolutely had to mention. They have to sneak into the castle where Ludendorff is, or the fortress, whatever. And there's a party going on, and whatever. So Steve Trevor's, that's Chris Pine's character, he dresses up and has the Arab dude from the squad driving him. And so he's all dressed up with his pipe. He's dressed up like a German, blah, blah, blah. Got the uniform. And he does this voice. And the Arab's like, 1,000 pardons. I have lost the invitation. Now I am a worm. He's like, what? What are you saying? And he's like, wait, what are you saying? You're saying that we are not going to the party because you insolent little worm, has forgotten the invitation. So they basically hold up the line, and there's like cars behind them trying to get in, and they're like, come on, move it. It's like, okay, yeah, just go in. I don't want to deal with this. Fuck it. Invitation, whatever, go. It's so funny. I absolutely love that scene. That moment it wasn't even like a full scene. It was just like a little moment, and it was great. It was just absolutely hilarious. But yeah, that was good. All right, so let's wrap everything up. I'll quickly go back over everything. I have time, and I will then give my final verdict. So the pros: the action was amazing and thrilling. The emotional moments in this movie, spot on. You could feel what the character was feeling. You could relate. It was It was empathetic, I think is the word I'm looking for here. There was just this great sense of emotion. The CGI was on point. It was very well done. And then Mascara was beautiful. The Amazonian island was absolutely gorgeous. I loved that scenery. Then cons, the muted colors. The colors needed to be brighter. There was just so much gray and black and dark blue that you really could not. It was not enough for me. I don't know, but that's a personal thing. The Scotsman's PTSD trope, didn't like that. The final battle was good, but it wasn't absolutely amazing. It just kind of sucked a little bit. It could have been way cooler. They could have, like, I don't know, gone out and started throwing, like, shells at each other or something. I don't know, something crazy. The villain was easy to spot. It was not hard at all for a movie buff like me to see that coming a mile off, but I don't think I'm not sure if the average viewer would have seen that coming, but I certainly did, and I didn't like it. And then that's it for the cons. The favorite moments, Steve Trevor's death made me almost cry. Antiope's death, same thing, almost made me cry. I was tearing up. I was actually about to cry at both of those scenes. It was that powerful. And then the Lost Invitation scene was just too damn funny. So overall, Wonder Woman. You know, what do we rate Gail Gadot's? I don't know how to say her name. I'm gonna call her Gail. What do we rate Gail as Diana Prince, as Wonder Woman? You know, what do we rate this movie? It was action-packed, it was funny, it had its, good moments, its cool moments, and it also introduced magic into the DC multiverse, which is really interesting. Or the DC Universe, multiverse, however they're going to do it, which is really, really interesting, because I think that's the one thing Superman's actually weak to, if I remember correctly, is magic. That's one of the only things that can actually affect Superman. But yeah, so this whole movie, what does it boil down to? Between the action, the muted colors, the funny moments, the great scenes, everything, I have to give this movie a final verdict of 9 out of 10. Now, it's a 9 out of 10 and not a 10 out of 10 for one very important reason, but this is a personal reason, and I took a point off for personal reasons, not for any sort of objective idea. So this personal reason had to be the muted colors. I've said it so many times in this review that I'm actually kind of sick of hearing myself say it, but the muted colors. Make it brighter, DC. Add some damn lighting. I'm so sick of this idea that we have to go darker. Stop doing that. No one wants it to be dark. No one wants these shadows, and I get it, they want it to be, they don't want it to be all bright and colorful like the Avengers or Spider-Man or something. But the comics were bright and colorful, and it looks good, and you can do it without it looking like shit. And there are certain scenes in here where it looks all right, it looks perfect, and it proves that they could do it without it looking like garbage, but they're choosing not to. It's an artistic choice, but it's an artistic choice that I wholly disagree with. But that is it for my Wonder Woman review. You guys really need to go out and see this movie. It is worth it. At least I know the theater where I went was $10. Totally fucking worth it. It's spot on. It's a wild ride, and it's great. It's a great origin story for Wonder Woman, and I cannot wait to see more of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in Justice League, and that is just beautiful. Beautiful film. Yep, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then do the usual. Like, subscribe, check out my streams, and I will see you guys in the next video. Reaper the Rager, signing off.
If you believe that this war should stop, help me stop it right now.
What are you? You will soon find out.